Do you want to come say hi? Say hi to everyone. Oh, don't look so sad. Happy girlfriend this morning, right? There's been lots of bird activity outside, right? Oh, don't show your butt. There's been lots of birds outside of my apartment this morning that they have been having a lot of fun staring at. You protect mama from them, don't you? You're a good helper, girl. You don't really want to be pet, do you? Huh? She's like, actually, don't touch me. Thank you. Anyways, okay, we're here for September wrap up to talk about all the books that I read in this past month. So I think, what did I end up finishing? I think I ended up finishing 8 books this month, but let me tell you guys, this was one of my best reading months of the year. I'm so excited to talk about so many of these books. I like loved the shit out of all the books that I read this month, so I'm very excited to talk about them. And I have a couple that I'm still in the middle of. I do have to film this a few days early than what I would normally want to. Like, it's not even the end of the month yet. However, I am going to be traveling for work, so I need to like have this pre-filmed and uploaded. So some of the books that I'm still currently reading, I might still finish this month, but if I do end up finishing them, then I'll just tag them into my October wrap up. So anyways, let's bring this around town. And what did we read first this month? We read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. So I started the month off with a thriller that I was still reading. So I finished this on vacation, and okay, so this one is like a Knives Out type premise. It follows our heroine Daisy Darker and the Darker family, and her Nana is turning 80 and she is having everyone to her home for her 80th birthday party. And it's on this like little island that when the tide goes out, they're like stuck in this house. Like there's no way to get away once that starts. And everyone in her family has like beefs with each other, whatever. And they all show up to the party. They're all kind of like fighting with each other. And then all of a sudden Nana dies. And then every single hour on the hour, another one of them keeps dying. And it's like a thriller. I won't spoil anything about this because like what would be the fun of that? I will just say that I was like pretty disappointed. I thought the premise was interesting, and I was like, oh, is it going to give me like Knives Out energy? And I just ended up being overall kind of like about it. This is my third Alice Feeney book. One of her books is like one of my favorite thrillers I've ever read in my entire life. A second one of her thrillers I was kind of like meh on. And now this is the third one, and I was like, it's going to be my tiebreaker book, and it's another like meh one. So I don't know if I'll pick up any more by her, but I still wouldn't not recommend it. It's just like, I don't really like the way that it resolved. That one aside, now let's get into literally every single other book that I read that I loved. So When Ashes Fall by Marnie Mann. I have this one physically, so I read this one this month. It's a little, like the cover is a little, you can see some sunscreen on it. I took it with me on vacation, and I cried down at the pool area reading that. So this one follows Alex, and again, this one is kind of hard to talk about because I don't really know what to say because I don't want to give anything away. And the blurb is very ambiguous, but it's basically Alex, and she is a woman living in Boston. She's a 911 responder, and I don't even know, how do I say this? How do I even talk about this book? So you're getting her POV in the present, and then you're also getting another character named Smith's POV from the past. And then you're also getting a third POV in the present, which is Dylan. And it's just, if you think that this is, and it even says on here, if you think the story is about a cheater, you couldn't be more wrong. And that is all I will say on it. Trust me, like, it's not maybe like where your head may be going, but I genuinely don't know how to talk about the premise of it without giving it away. So I'm actually going to leave it at that. If you want to look up the blurb, go for it. But I will just say that this was a very emotional book. It truly had me in a chokehold the entire time. Like, Alex is definitely, you can tell that she's just like going through stuff and you just don't know what it is until the end. And it's just, it's heartbreaking, but it's beautiful at the same time. And it's just, it was so good. I absolutely loved it. Marnie Mann is like one of my favorite authors that I started reading this year. So I think I've now read like 7 or 8 of her books, and I've loved every single one of them, and this was no exception. Absolutely loved it. Her writing is incredible, and just read this. Trust me, just read this book. If you want like an emotional roller coaster of a ride, read this book. Trust me, it's so good, but I just can't really say anything to you about it. Next up then, this one was part of the trope battle read along that we were doing. All of those details I always live over on Instagram, but Nikki's pick for it was Catching Lightning by Greer Rivers and Kaylee King, and I finished that one this month. And this one is a college sports enemies to lovers romance. So this one follows Hudson and Blake. So Hudson is a star football player and Blake is a student at the university. And basically, so this story started out as an novella and then it got expanded into a full-length book. So I'm pretty sure like what part you could tell was the novella was at the beginning, where there's this big like hunt that goes on at the university every year. So the football players, there's a watch hidden from like one of the coaches. It also takes place around Halloween, so it's like a little like spooky-ish vibes. And there's like a watch that's hidden in the grounds, and then people run and try to find it, and then football players hunt them down and like capture them, you know? And Blake and Hudson just have this little bit of tension, and of course then when this night comes around, she is like ready to rock and roll and get this watch, and he ends up hunting her down, and they end up having a little moment, you know? And their romance and tension goes from there. There ends up, and I do want to include this part, it's not super spoil, it's like I think it happens like 20% in, but I know it can be triggering for some people. There is a video that is leaked of the two of them hooking up after this chase scene, and that's kind of like where the like problems and tension all escalate from in the story. But I do just want to include that in there just in case if anyone is sensitive to that, because I know in this day of an age that is very triggering for some, but that's kind of like where their story catapults from. So I enjoyed this one. Honestly, like even when I sat down to talk about this, I couldn't quite remember like a lot of the plot stuff by the end, because I think by the end point, I was just kind of like, I'm just ready to see them like be together and kind of be done with it. It was a fun like college sports romance, and it still had like some emotion packed into it. But overall, like I just never felt connected to either of these two characters. Like me personally, I was never like invested in them as individuals or as a couple, but like the story was still a fun time to read along with it. Next up, I read Her Soul for Revenge by Harley LaRue, which is book 2 in the Souls trilogy, and this was so good. So this one follows Juniper and Zane. So you do have to read these in order. Well, I think that's how she advertises them. I highly, highly, highly would recommend reading them in order, because you get some background on Juniper and Zane from book 1, and then you also see Leon and why can I never remember her name? I literally can never remember her name. Leon and whatever the heroine's name is from the first book, whatever. You see them in this one, and you kind of get like the lay of the land with the world, because it is paranormal. Zane's a demon. So Juniper was almost sacrificed by a cult in this town. So she was best friends with this one girl, which you know from the first book if you've read it. And you know that she lured Juniper out into the woods, gave her some drugs. They were both, Juniper thought they were both tripping. She ended up luring Juniper into the woods, and this cult tried to sacrifice her because of like her bloodline and everything, and they believe that like they need to make the necessary sacrifices, and she was supposed to be one of them, and she did end up escaping from them, and now she's kind of been on the run. But now she has come back to town. They have targeted someone she loves, and she is ready to get some revenge, but she knows that she can't get it on her own, and she attracts the attention of this demon Zane, and he wants her soul. So he offers her a bargain like, hey, you can't take them down by yourself, so I will help you take them down if you give me your soul. And it ends up being their romance, and they are dynamic. They are so good together, because like Juniper really, she's used to being on her own. She doesn't trust Zane. She doesn't really have trust for anyone after everything that she's been through, but he's like, you need my help, and I'm attracted to you, and I'm gonna slowly like wear you down. And it's so good. Her Soul to Take, the first book, is still my favorite between the two, but I absolutely loved this one. And also the look into the third book, I'm even more excited to jump into that one with Everly. But this is like, if you want like demons, witches, you want really, really hot stuff, but then you also want like good plot and revenge. I love a good revenge story, and Juniper is an incredibly strong heroine. Like I don't really have like any complaints about this book. I absolutely loved it, and perfect for spooky season. So if you haven't picked up the Souls trilogy, do it now. Then to put this aside to talk about this next one, and I just need to settle in for a moment because we're about to get into it. And I know some of you don't like it when I talk about fan fiction. Some of y'all got really sick of me talking about Manacled last year, and that's kind of why I stopped, because like everyone was like, I don't want to hear any more about that. You know what? I don't care at this point. You can skip ahead if you don't want to hear me talk about Secrets and Masks by Emerald Slytherin, which is another fan fiction. But let me tell you, if you are still looking down upon fan fiction, thinking that it is not as well written, not as well crafted as a like traditionally or independently published book, you couldn't be more wrong. You could not be more wrong, because this was a masterpiece. A masterpiece. This is a Hermione fan fiction, which is Draco and Hermione, and it does take place in the Harry Potter universe. And I will just preface this, if you don't know anything about Harry Potter, I still think you can read this and make your way along, because I don't really know that much about Harry Potter. I've like watched the movies once, or like some of them a couple times, but like I barely know like lore in it, and also I've never read the books, but I love me some Draco and Hermione. So This one follows them. So the war is still raging with this one between the Order and Voldemort. And Draco is obviously a part of Voldemort's army. He is his demon mask. He has a dragon. They are obviously battling the Order, and Hermione is a very important part of the Order. She is an amazing wizard on like the field, on the battlefield, very strong, like strategic mind, whatever, very important to them. But once again, they are kind of like shit to her. And she ends up getting captured on a mission, and she is brought in front of Voldemort, and he decides that she is going to be Draco's prisoner, and that he is going to put her under this demon hex and use her against the Order. So that way he puts her under the spell where she ends up going out and is like a killing machine for them basically, and having to kill her friends. And it ends up being an enemies to lovers romance, captor captive. It is, I have no words. It's almost 2,000 pages long. It's so long. I was reading it since the end of July, and I just now finished it this month because it was so insanely long, but it was so insanely good. And I don't want to spoil how anything ends. I will just say that this one is not for the traditional romance girlies. If you like, you know, the traditional HEA, this one's not for you. I personally love it. I loved every single bit of emotion that was packed into this, not only with Draco and Hermione, but also with the side characters. I am now a Theo stan. I had no idea who Theodore Nott was, but now I'm like, do I need to be reading Theo fanfiction? Because he was amazing, and there's like such a found family aspect to this too that I just absolutely adored. I love in Manacled that Draco and Hermione truly only have each other to understand each other and to rely on, but then in this one it was still kind of that case, but then they also had Draco's family, not like his blood family, but like his found family, and it was so good. I literally can't say enough good things about this fanfiction. It was just absolutely incredible. I loved it. At the beginning it was a little bit slow for me to get into, but once it started chugging along, like I was completely sold in the story. And I am buying bookbinding supplies because I want to figure out how to bind this, because I was able to get a copy of Manacled last year and I absolutely love and treasure that so much, and now I need this. This is gonna be a top read of the year for me. So I'm sorry to those people out there who don't like when I talk about fan fiction, but I had to talk about it because I just loved it. And you know, for the people out there who also are interested in getting into it, so good. But it does deal with the war, and it is darker, so definitely like look up triggers for this. It's not like a lighthearted like, oh, they're just like running around being together. No, there's like some really messed up things in here, but it's so good and my dark heart loves it. Read next. Oh, I got another 2 books that I really loved back to back. By Virtue I Fall by Cora Riley. This is the 3rd book in the Sins of the Father series, which if this is like your first video that you've ever seen of me, I am the biggest Camorra Chronicle and Born in Blood fan. Those are like my favorite Mafia books of all time. And I was so excited when she announced the spin-off series, but I really did not like the first 2 books in it. So I completely like put a pause on it because I didn't want to not like them, because these are like my babies. But something about me this month was like, I'm going to pick it back up. I'm going to pick it back up. And it's Anna's book, who is Dante and Valentina's daughter. And it's her romance with her bodyguard, which is even better. So it's Anna and Santino's romance. So obviously it's Mafia, and Anna has grown up being this Mafia kind of princess by her parents in Chicago, and she loves like fashion and she wants to design clothes, but she also knows that as the daughter of the capo of the Chicago Mafia, she has certain expectations that are placed on her. Has this hair just been sticking out? How annoying is that? Oh my god, I'm gonna look back in editing and see that and be like, ugh. Anyways, she knows that she has expectations, and when Dante kind of is looking to secure some alliances with some politicians, so outside of the Mafia family, he ends up arranging a marriage for Anna and this politician's son. So she knows this. She knows that she's engaged. The marriage gets arranged when they're like 15 or something. So she kind of like knows what's expected of her. However, they're not going to get engaged or anything until they're like years down the line. Anna's like, I got some time on my hands and I really like my bodyguard. And she pursues the hell out of him, and he never wanted to be her bodyguard to begin with. He wanted to be an enforcer, but he was only doing it because it was his duty, and he just does not like Anna pushing his buttons. It's a 10-year age gap, and especially when she's younger, he's like, I'm not even looking at you twice. But then when she does turn 18 and she really turns up her advances and ends up going to Paris with him to go to fashion school, and he ends up being the only one going there with her, and it's just the 2 of them in Paris. he gets a really hard time staying away from her. But let me tell you, the tension and the angst between these two was so good. It was bringing me back all of my favorite things about some of Cora Riley's other books. Truly, these two, like, they get under each other's skin. They're playful with each other. They have great banter, and truly, like, the amount of times that he would just like turn her down until he finally like snapped. Oh my god, it was so good. I really loved it. The only thing was at the end, it resolved a little too easily for my liking, but overall, I was like really impressed by it. I think because I went into it with low expectations because of not liking the first two so much. So I definitely really enjoyed it. It's not like, I don't love it as much as I love the Kimura Chronicles still, but I really liked this one a lot and I was very pleasantly surprised. Then now, guys, I read another just absolute favorite. So for Out of Bounds Book Club this month, we read Garen Parks by Nordica Night. And let me tell you, another top 10 of the year. I think this month specifically, Secrets and Masks and Garen Parks are like, they secured their spots on my top 10. I loved this book so much, and I had like zero expectations going into it. I hadn't really heard many people talking about it. I think Lizelle was the only one that I heard talking about it on BookTube, and I haven't read anything by Nordica Night before, so I just like really didn't have like a whole lot of expectations going into it. But this one is an motocross hate to love romance between Maddox and Devin, and let me tell you, this is how every single hate to love book should be done. It was perfection. I have not a single complaint about this book, so if you're like waiting for me to like say something that I didn't like, you're not gonna get it, because literally this book was perfect to me front to back. This involves Devin and Maddox, and they both are motocross racers who live in Garen Parks. It's this like pretty rundown kind of trailer park, and neither of them really has aspirations of like leaving it and like making it big out in like the big city, whatever. They're like, we just basically don't want to be like poor anymore. We just want to have enough money in our bank account to like support ourselves and kind of like get away from our parents who have never been like parents to us, but they hate each other. So like they're not like sharing that mutual dream with each other yet. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself, as I always do when I talk about books that I love. They were basically raised to hate each other. Their dads raised them to hate each other because they were always in competition in motocross races, and the dads always wanted the like winning money that both their sons brought in. They're always getting into fights. They're always beating each other up. But that is until one night when I think it's Devin's dad. So Devin's dad almost like kills him. He like beats him so badly, and he goes to Maddox's trailer because he's looking for his older brother, because their two older brothers are like best friends. And so he goes looking for his brother and he's not there, and Maddox is like, I literally can't let you leave. Like, I hate you. Fuck you, but like get in my trailer and like I will help clean you up a little bit, because you're literally gonna like die right in front of me if I don't help you. So there's like a little bit of caretaking right there, but still, even in that moment from the beginning, you can still see how much they truly hate each other, even when they have like this caretaking moment. And basically their romance just kind of goes from there. Let me tell you, the hate to love, it never ceases. Even when they start being like, we're kind of like attracted to one another, it's still like, but I hate you. And they're just so intense. Their connection is intense. Everything about them is intense. And they grab each other's throats all the time. They're like throwing each other around. Even then when they start hooking up, they're still like getting into fights and like brawls with each other. It's just, I literally can't say enough good things about this book. It's literally a new all-time favorite of mine. So I feel like I need to shut up about it because I feel like I did a shit job explaining it. And I always do that. It's always the books that I love the most that then I feel like I explain them really poorly, because I'm just like, I just love it. So anyways, though, please go read this book. And what was the last one? Lastly, Don't Stop Me by Eden Emery. So this one was our Smut Club pick for this month. And this one is a exes, moms, sapphic, club kind of romance. So the book starts where Nyx ends up going to this club, and it's like a ladies only club, and she ends up going and she has an appointment with Axe, this older, more experienced woman, to kind of like show her the ropes on some things, you know, like she's really just trying to explore herself a little bit. And they end up having an amazing night, but obviously like with the club and everything, everyone like kind of uses secret names, whatever, so they end up going their separate ways. And she's always thinking about this night with Axe, with this woman from the club, but she doesn't run back into her until she gets blackmailed by her ex-boyfriend to join him at a wedding for a family member. And when he brings her home, guess who is his mother? Axe. and it ends up being their romance. So there's kind of like some forced proximity in there. There's obviously like the son being in the way because the mom is like, you cheated on my son with me, because the club like situation happened when the mom thinks that they were still dating because her son is lying to her saying that they've been together for months and they've been broken up for months, but he just needed to bring a date home, and it ends up being the mom and Nix's romance. So I liked this one. It was definitely hot, and I just kind of wish that we focused more on just like the club and like the forbiddenness of the relationship of them being together with her having been with the son, rather than there's some organized crime stuff that comes into the mix, and straight up I just didn't care about it. I just wanted more of like their connection, and I didn't really care about like Axe's business as much. So I still enjoyed this. I would still recommend it. Also, there was a side character, Sloane, who came into the mix for an FFF scene, which like rent free up here. However, I am more excited for her book because it's a stepsisters romance, and I just really liked the little snippets of Sloane that we got. So I'm definitely going to keep going in the series, and Eden Emery is definitely an author that I want to read more from. There were just some certain things about this book that weren't my favorite, but like overall, I still enjoyed it. So that is everything that I read in the month of September. I might finish Hawk by Jessie Hall by the end of the month still, because I still have a couple of days. That's what I'm currently reading, but I don't think I will finish it like in time that I would be able to add it into this video. So I'll have it featured in my October wrap up, but I'm really liking it. It's giving me after vibes, and I'm very excited for it. So anyways, okay, yeah, that is right. Yep, that's everything. Okay, that's it for today's video. I don't know what's going to be up on Friday. I don't know that far ahead. I'll figure it out when I get there. So anyways, that is it for today's video, and I will see you when I see ya.